right, let's talk about Big Ten tight ends. We've done the teams, we've done the quarterbacks, the running backs, and the receivers. So the last and final offensive skill position, we got the tight ends. So let's talk about where the Gophers stack up, where the rest of the conference is at. A really unique position in football. It's not going to win or lose you games necessarily as much of as some of the other positions we've talked about, but a good tight end can really open up your offense and uh, really raise the floor of your offense, both in a run blocking perspective and an offensive pass catcher perspective. So let's talk about where the Big Ten is at. So right off the bat, we have, well, for this exercise, I'm doing the top two tight ends for each team. I was originally going to do the number one tight end on every team, but some teams do have a really solid two-man punch. We've seen plenty of football teams the last decade kind of have that two tight end set that really acts as a dynamic weapon in their offense. So right off the bat, we have at the top Jack Villing from Michigan State, the number two returning receiver based on production from last year at the tight end position. He trails only Max Clare, who's a transfer from Purdue that's going to Ohio State. He had, or Velling originally started at Oregon State with Jonathan Smith and then followed him to East Lansing. Uh, Really solid player that I think is going to play in the NFL. Just a good two-way tight end. He's good at blocking, good at pass catching, and I think he's proven himself to be a step above everyone else in this conference. His number two might not be as good as other people on this list with Michael Masunis, but I think Michigan State loves what they got going at tight end. All right. So the second tier here are really a group that I think if they play up to their potential, they're going to finish higher than Velling and Michigan State on an end of the year list. Um, It's just Velling has had too much production, I think, to not have him at the number one spot. Number two here, we got Oregon with Kenyon Sadiq and Jamari Johnson. Two, they honestly might be my favorite duo. I think the only team with two guys that could argue to be the number one spot. Johnson had a really good freshman year last year at Louisville, and I think Sadiq could be in a for a big step up this year. They lost Terrence Ferguson to the NFL. Dan Lanning likes to use his tight ends, and I think they could have a big year this year in Eugene. Number two here, we got Luke Reynolds and Khalil Dinkins. Penn State loses Tyler Warren to the NFL to the Indianapolis Colts. And Luke Reynolds, former five-star recruit, I think he has the billings to be a really nice tight end. I don't know if it's going to happen this year, but I think we could start to see a bit of those flashes. And he could maybe be the next great Penn State tight end. We've seen Mike Gesicki, we've seen Tyler Warren. They like to use their tight ends in the offense. I think this year they used the receivers a little more, but Dinkins and Reynolds, two very talented players. All right, Max Clare from Ohio State. I would assume that the consensus is going to say he's the best tight end in the conference. I have a few questions if he just did it on a Purdue team that didn't really have any other options. I think he's a very good tight end, and it wouldn't shock me if he leads this position group in this list in receiving. But Ohio State has a lot of options. They've had a handful of tight ends the last few years, Cade Stover, guys like that. I don't think that Max Clare is going to win the Mackey Award by any means. I think Jack Velling could be a dark horse, but um, talent wise, he might be number one on this list. But I still have questions if he can do it on an offense like Ohio State, like he did it on Purdue last year because he might have been their best offensive player. So it'll be interesting to see what he does with Ohio State. But I think he still needs to prove a little bit in my eyes. Firmly in that second tier, in my opinion. And I would not dock anyone that has him number one, if not in the top tier. Next on this list, we have Jameson Geers and Frank Bierman, Minnesota's top two tight ends. Jameson Geers might be the most underrated tight end in the conference. I said it, and that's not homerism again. I think so. He's number three in returning production behind Claire and Velen. And Minnesota didn't pass the ball a whole lot last year. Max Brosman really liked him target wise. We'll see if that continues with Drake Lindsay, but I think Gears has a future in the NFL. I think he'll get a shot. I don't know if he'll be drafted next spring, um, but he'll certainly get a shot, in my opinion. And Frank Bierman, really underrated blocking tight end. The Gophers kind of like to use him in that spot. They went out and got Drew Biber as well, but these are their top two options. The guys who are going to play the top two most snaps. And I wouldn't overlook Gears. I think he's really solid and he's proven himself. Next, we have Iowa's tight ends. Probably the most biggest question mark that Iowa's had at the position, maybe for like a decade. They lose Luke Lachey and Eric All was on that team last year, I believe. I might be mixing it up, but they returned two guys that have played a lot of snaps, but not the like surefire George Kittle, Noah Fant, Dallas Clark, those type of tight ends. It's that T.J. Hawkinson. I don't think either one of these guys are that, but I think it's really hard to put Iowa's tight ends any lower. I think Ostringa or Ortworth could be their number one option at receiver, but I think for the first time in a while we're going to see a receiver lead this team in receiving yards this year. But still two solid tight ends, and I think I was happy with what they got there. Next, we got USC with Lake McCree and Walker Lyons. Rounding out this tier, I think all three of Minnesota, USC, and Iowa, I think they're happy with what they got at the position, and they have proven, I think, solid options, but they don't have as high a potential as that Oregon, Penn State, and Ohio State duo. And I think McCree and Lyons are epitomize that description. Really solid tight ends. I think they block and catch the ball well, but still a few questions, I guess, there. In the next tier here, we got kind of a low ceiling, low floor type of tier. I think above them in the Gears, Minnesota, Iowa, USC tier, there was kind of low ceiling, high floor. These guys have some interesting potential, but still maybe some question marks. And I think Michigan's great to start with here with Marlon Klein and Hanson Hogan. Two, I guess, talented players that are going to be able to hold their own, and they're not going to be a weakness. But it's not like, ooh, look out for Michigan's tight ends this week. And I think their offense is just built around different playmakers heading into the year. Next, we got Rutgers with Kenny Fletcher Jr. and Colin Weber. Colin Weber might be an underrated transfer portal pickup from Charlotte, and Kenny Fletcher Jr. played a little bit last year. This is a solid duo. I might be underrating, and I think the majority of people might be underrating, but I think Rutgers is pretty happy with what they got there. And then next we got Nebraska. Really interesting duo here with Luke Lindenmeyer and Heinrich Harburg, who began his career as a quarterback for the Cornhuskers. He shifted to tight end. Interesting player. I think they like what they got at tight end, but I think Dylan Raiola is going to be thrown to his receivers a lot more than his tight ends. And a solid duo, but nothing to write home about. And then rounding out this tier, we got Washington with Decker, DeGraff, and Quentin Moore. Again, another one that solid players, but nothing to, I guess, write home about by any means. And then the final, or not final tier, but next tier here, we got the true transfer portal wild cards. Dorian Fleming, another guy who might be able to climb up this list. He was really productive last year at Georgia State, and he could. Maryland, Ty Felton moving on. They got a lot of questions at receiver, new QB. Maybe Fleming steps up. has a big year in College Park, but I got more questions than answers with how we can make the Sun Belt to Big Ten jump. So I got them firmly in this tier. And then the other team I see with a similar situation is Indiana. Holden Stays from Tennessee by way of Notre Dame is now on his third school. And he's a talented player, but he really hasn't shown to be a great tight end by any means. So I still have some questions there. And then Riley Nowakowski, also a transfer from Wisconsin. So I think both those guys could be solid, but two transfers as your top two options, doesn't work out great. Indiana's kind of taking the portal approach again, and that's why I'm a little bit lower on them than most. It's hard to do that year over year. I mean, you look at the Gophers, quarterback and running back are program players, and starting tight end is a program player they recruited out of high school. They have, their top two receivers could be transfers, but in their offensive lines, a lot of transfers, but they're filling in the gaps. I feel like Indiana and some of these schools are relying too heavily on the portal. And I think we'll see it this year with the Hoosiers, but that's just me. That's just me. Next tier here, kind of just unproven guys that they could be good, but I just can't, I couldn't see an argument for ranking them any higher. Tucker Ashcraft looked good last year for Wisconsin, but I think he only had like 10 or 12 catches. So I'm firmly on this tier with his running mate, JT Seagreaves, and then Tucker Arkin and Cole Rusk. I keep doing these lists, and Illinois is not very high for all these skill positions, and I don't see why people are so high on Illinois. Uh, Everyone's like the returning production. Okay, these tight ends really weren't anything special. So, they're starting worthy, I guess, but not going to win you any games and not going to be a player that a defense has to game plan around. And then last duo on this tier is from UCLA with Hudson Habermal and Jack Peterson. Two guys, again, starting potential. Really not a whole lot there. And then rounding out this list, we got Purdue and Northwestern. I don't have much analysis here. None of these four players really played much last year. Northwestern has some serious questions at the position. I had to like double and triple check. They didn't have anyone else on the roster, but they filled in nicely other places. So I'm not gonna talk too down on any of these players. I mean, they're Division I Big Ten players, but a lot of question marks there. And I think both Purdue and Northwestern are firmly at the bottom at the position. All right, so there we have it. That is the tight end duos. Not a glorious position. Not many names that really many people recognize. I think next week we're going to do offensive line tiers, and we're just going to do those as a group. Again, another position that not many people recognize, but I think it's important to understand where these teams stack up. Makes you a more informed fan. I think there's now more than ever, I think realizing how talented the team you're watching is, I think improves your view and experience. But I guess in this group in general, to round it out, if I had to talk maybe top five pure tight ends in the league, um, Max Clare, Jack Velling are up there. And then honestly, Jameson Geers might be number three. Kenyon Sadiq, Luke Reynolds, Jamari Johnson. A lot of talented players at the position. So it'll be interesting to see who rises to the top. There's a big window and gap left by Tyler Warren, who's now in the NFL, for, I guess, the tight end crown in the Big Ten. See if any of these guys can compete for that Mackey Award that Warren won last year over Harold Fannin Jr. So, as always, I appreciate you guys for watching. Make sure you subscribe to Bring Me the Sports on YouTube. It'll help these videos get found. It'll help us out a ton. Make sure you drop a like and keep an eye out for the rest of any Minnesota sports coverage over on Gophers SI, Timberwolves on SI, Vikings and Twins, and any videos on here. So appreciate you guys for watching, and until next time.